Recording in progress.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of A Spotlight on a Leader Doing Amazing Things in the World. I'm your host, AJ, and I have a beautiful guest, someone that I've only known for maybe a couple of months so far, and that is Amanda Trenfield. Hi, Amanda, welcome.
Thank you, AJ. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's lovely to have your beaming sunny face here with us. And we're going to talk about something that's a little bit different, but really relevant to leaders in the modern workplace today. And particularly now, we have 5 generations in the workplace. We have people who are neurodiverse. We have all different ways of working and being. That really, I wanted to invite Amanda on because she's got some really different ways of starting to look at some of this. Now, first, Amanda, I know you come from a really kind of traditional financial services background where you've worked in some really senior roles in large organizations, and you've really had the opportunity to support organizations in doing great things through your work in financial services until your career took a little bit of a twist, shall we say. But I'd love for people here that don't know you, if you wouldn't mind giving us the kind of abbreviated, who are you? And
Yes.
How did you get to be here?
Fantastic. Thanks so much, AJ. Yes, I did have a very traditional career. I did a Bachelor of Commerce and Economics at university, and then I moved to Sydney and I took up a graduate position with Bankers Trust, and that opened my financial services career. So I've worked for companies such as, Bankers Trust, Macquarie Bank, and Barclays Capital, the investment bank for Barclays Bank out of the UK. And my last role was as the National Sales Manager for State Street Global Advisors in Sydney. And so over that sort of 20-year financial services career, I really focused on client and business development and managing strategic partnerships. And that was an incredible career, very fulfilling and very rewarding. And I look back at my time in financial services with a big smile on my face because I really did have, incredible peers and incredible clients that I worked with. What I found, though, as I was getting older, and it did coincide with COVID, is that being at home and then going into another whole year where the KPIs continued to increase, the pressure continued to build. So even though I was performing very well in my role, every year with those expectations continuing to increase, I just actually found it really quite difficult to breathe. So it was ironic. The more I delivered, the more expectation there was. And so in the end, I just sort of felt like I was surviving in my role. I wasn't thriving. And during that time, whilst maintaining that role, I listened to a podcast. And the podcast was on the ferry between Manly and the CBD, and it was on human design. And I thought it was fascinating. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go and book a consultation and see what happens. And so I did. And so within 90 minutes, what the consultant could tell me about me that I hadn't fully appreciated or respected within myself was unveiled. And I thought, okay, I'm going down a rabbit hole here. I need to understand more about how a modality could see into my unconscious traits and the way I operate versus what I had traditionally believed and been taught. And so I did. I went down a rabbit hole. I did a 6-week mini course, and then I was hooked. So I did I studied during COVID, actually, over 1.5 years full time with the Institute in America. And the reason I studied with the BG5 Business Institute is that it takes human design into the workplace. So because I had a solid professional career behind me in financial services, I could recognize very quickly that bigger corporations or medium to large corporations could really benefit from understanding themselves, their leadership style, their teams through the lens of human design. And so that's what I did. So I did that and then started my business Authentic Human in 2023.
Beautiful. So let's whizzy back to financial services. And I think lots of people who are on here are working for other organizations, working for other people. I'd love to just dig in first before we go into some of what you've done with human design.
Sure.
Because they are quite different. And yet when I hear you're a national sales manager, you're probably using a lot of that intuitively. But I'd love to just dig back to go, what were some of the challenges or experiences you had when you were in financial services that really helped you develop your leadership or influence skills? Like, what was it that you found that you're still taking from that experience of earlier in your career when you worked in financial services?
Yeah, good question. So when it comes to leadership skills, it's really interesting. I've never held a traditional leadership role within my financial services roles, but I've had senior roles within. So I haven't managed people. And that's really interesting because through the lens of human design, I'm here to lead and guide. And so the way I did that was really through mentoring, either externally or internally within the organizations. And what I've been able to carry through, and again, it just sort of comes from working in an industry and understanding the way the politics works and understanding the way that relationship management can really benefit the corporations that you're working for. I just found that, you know, the trajectory that I was able to achieve is probably not the right word, but the trajectory I was on allowed me to work with individuals and clients at a much more senior level. And those skills of presenting and one-on-one client analysis have really just transferred now into the business that I'm currently running.
Right. Yeah. So, and I guess leadership comes in many forms. I always say leadership can be with or without title, right? It's not that you have to necessarily have direct reports. And I know there are people here on the call, maybe pop a Y in the chat box if you have direct reports, if you're a leader of other people, and put an N if you're not, just so that we can see kind of the split. And I think what happens is, so we've got lots of people here who are managing people directly. Yeah. Great. And I think you'll find that some of the skills are the same, but also sometimes some of the challenges, Amanda, is when we don't have direct reports, but we have to make change happen. Yeah. So often it's easier when we have direct reports and they're actually within our team, and so we can give instructions and those sorts of things. But in roles like you've had, we have to influence across without having that direct line of report. So any tips or things that you have there that you found worked for you?
Yeah, influence is the right word, because particularly as I was starting to help develop some of the business development managers within these corporations, the key way that I could influence without being a direct manager was actually leading by example. And so I would take the more junior members of the team out on my client calls. So this could be to the head of research to do a research house analysis on one of the products and portfolios. It could be with a senior private bank. So they could recognize not only within themselves, but the skills that are required if you're wanting to move forward. And so it's subtle form of leadership development when you're mentoring or when you're you're demonstrating how to get to that next level and what subtle skills are required when you're in front of clients. And so I actually think that teaching is very valuable, and it's not something that can necessarily be taught in a traditional way. So it's an experimentation for them.
It's a lot around those soft skills and being able to read people and be able to manage an environment. I'm curious about the challenge of jumping then from working from like Bankers Trust, Macquarie Bank, big organizations where in a way, I guess when you're going in to represent them, you've got a big logo behind you, to then stepping out into business on your own and your company, Authentic Human, but it's still you representing you. What have been some of the challenges of then transitioning to going, open a business? And I think quite a few people came to that during COVID, where that was kind of a transition time for lots of people. What's been some of your biggest challenges, or even some of your wins too?
Sure. Lots of challenges, actually, AJ. I don't think I appreciated how hard it was to run a small business. And again, when you're working for a big corporation, I will admit I was very naive as to what happened behind the scenes that I wasn't responsible for or had any remit over. And so when it came to launching Authentic Human, I had never written a website. I've never written a marketing brochure. You know, I had to learn a completely new set of skills that on the surface seemed quite easy, but in retrospect, and whilst doing it, it was really challenging. And so what has been really beneficial for me as a human really is to understand where my limitations are from the small business side and where to pull in help. And then what I've been really happy to step into with 2 feet. So building the website, as challenging as that was at the start, and I did have some help, is incredibly rewarding, because I think when you look back and you sort of say, wow, you know, I came in not knowing how to get into a back end of any type of software, to be able to go in and to manage my own website on a daily basis if required, add blogs. You know, I wasn't even posting on LinkedIn because as a representative of State Street, that was all taken care of by someone else. So there's been a lot of challenges, and there was a huge amount of naivety on my part. But I actually think if I wasn't as naive, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I completely hear you. And I think I remember when I first started my business, and I eased into it in that I started working a 4-day week. And on my last day of the week, I would coach people, and I started to build into my own. But I remember going from quite a very good 6-figure salary down to 5 figures in my first year of business, and just realizing that I didn't have the capacity to serve all the clients that was going to give me the income, and so I really had to think about my business model. And it was quite challenging, because when you do work for large companies, so much of that, you've got HR and you've got IT, you have a problem with something and you're like, I'll just ring IT or get my assistant to bring someone around. And then you were like, suddenly I'm making the cups of teas and I'm fixing my computer. So I hear you. And I hear how important it is to be resourceful. And sometimes that can be such a great learning ground. I am still ever grateful that my very first professional career was working for the health department, where there really wasn't much money to go around. And I had to learn to be really resourceful and make my dollars stretch in all sorts of ways and be really creative. And I think we can take a lot from those experiences.
That's right. And that can go across all parts of life. You know, it's, yes, I'm not jumping on 6 a.m. flights to Melbourne to present now. I'm really considered about if I'm traveling to see clients and how many clients I'm seeing. I'm much more structured when it comes to, okay, I'm going to do a workshop. So what's the minimum viable number of people I need to have that workshop be a success? So if I host a workshop for a day in Double Bay, I want 20 people in that room. Okay, great. I'm going ahead and I'm doing that. If I'm doing a team development offsite, well, that's client dependent and company dependent. And 5 or more works best, particularly when you're doing an internal company structure. And up to about 20 seems to be the sweet spot to deliver a high quality presentation, yet, ensure that it's commercially viable from my perspective.
Yeah. Oh, totally. So let's loop back now to you jumped out of commercial financial services, and anyone here that's ever changed careers completely might appreciate, how ballsy that can be and how scary sometimes. But you heard this podcast that was about human design, and you looked into it and then went and did your course through BG5 and, started to learn more. Would love to know in the chat box if you've heard of human design before. Type a Y so we know if you have. But I know for me, I only first heard about it maybe 2 years ago, I would say. So even post-COVID for myself. And so can you just give us a little overview, basically, of what is human design? Lots of us will have maybe heard of like the Myers-Briggs indicators and the DISC profiles and all those kind of profile tools that often HR people and that use in workplaces, but human design's a little different. So what is human design?
Of course, it's actually, it's a little esoteric in the fact that it's a synthesis of ancient and modern sciences, but it's proven to be a really valuable resource in understanding yourself. And so it's actually a combination of the Kabbalah tree of life, the Hindu Brahman chakra system, the Chinese I Ching, quantum physics, and astrology. And in essence, what it's doing is it's giving you a map of your own unique genetic design. I call it your blueprint for life. So how you are genuinely designed to operate from birth. Because what happens is As soon as we're born, we basically start to be conditioned throughout life. And so what human design can do is just bring you back to who you were when you were born. And so the benefit of that is that you can then lean into all of the qualities and characteristics that you've come here with inherently that you may or may not even be aware of. And it can also sort of help not only your quality of life from a professional sense, of course, but a personal sense as well. So it can improve your health and well-being. It can improve the quality of your relationships, because the more you can understand and appreciate yourself and your uniqueness, the more then you look at others and sort of say, well, look, if I'm operating like this and this is how I make decisions and this is how my energy is designed to operate, perhaps I'm different from other people. And that there is so much gold in that, because then you stop treating other people like yourself and you start saying, you know what, maybe they operate differently, maybe they make decisions differently, maybe their energy style is different, maybe they collaborate, maybe they're more independent. And, you know, it's terrific when it comes to children, so we might park that, but, you know, I'd love to talk about sort of how you can utilize human design in your personal life as well.
Right. And I know for me, when I'm working with teams, I once had an elder say to me, and it stuck with me, and I talk about it a lot with teams, is, you know, that saying of treat people how you want to be treated. What the elder said is actually you should treat people how they want to be treated. And human design sounds like that to me, that it's understanding we're all unique and being able to modify and adapt the way we communicate and relate with people depending on what their human design is. And with anything in leadership, we always have to start with ourselves. So that greater understanding we have and that emotional intelligence we have is what helps us lead others and influence others in an even better way. Someone's commented that they love that this is so holistic. I couldn't agree more. For some people listening, they might have heard the I Ching and the Kabbalah and things like that and be going, oh my God, this is some kind of woo-woo thing. And yet, ancient wisdom can often hold true in our modern world and life. And maybe more than ever, we're needing to go back and check in with some of those things. Can you tell us just briefly a little bit about perhaps your type? And we think we know my type because it does depend on you knowing when you were born, correct? As in not just your date of birth, but actually the location and the time you were born.
Exactly right. And that's the esoteric nature. And that's why, you know, don't forget, I had a very logical upbringing and I had a financial services background, but I always knew there had to be an additional level of intelligence that I wasn't tapping into. And that's what human design has provided for me. So I can see myself so clearly through my design. And it's only through experimentation that you can see if it's going to work for you or not. So I've been working with my design for over 6 years now, and it is so incredibly powerful. And it's not to say that you love everything about your design. I certainly don't love everything about mine, but I can see it and I can accept it. And this is that level of compassion, acceptance, and understanding, not only for yourself and the way you operate, but then other people. And so from a human design perspective, and some of the people on the chat know of human design, there are 5 different types. There's the generators, the manifesting generators, the projectors, the manifestors, and the reflectors. And I'm a projector. So what does that mean? That's 20% of the population. And the projectors are here to lead and guide, but not do all the doing. That we leave that for the generator energy types. The projectors, the manifestors, and the reflectors, they're non-energy types. What does that mean? It means that we need to be much more cognizant of where we are putting our energy and how much rest that we're actually getting. And that was so true for me, because in financial services, with the big KPIs that we had, we'd have to do, you know, 4 or 5 meetings a day. And then as I became more senior, I'd be taking clients for dinner. So I'd be working from maybe a 6 a.m., you know, flight to Melbourne, doing 5 back-to-back meetings and then doing a dinner. That was completely exhausting for my system. Now, you can do it, but you do it with a lot of caffeine, and that's not overall healthy for you. And so what I learned through human design is, yeah, I've got variable amounts of energy. It doesn't mean I don't have it. Of course I do. But it does mean I need to be more efficient with how I use it. And so now when I'm looking at my diary for my clients, I won't do more than 3 client meetings a day. And that is to protect my energy, but of course also to give the best to the clients. The other key thing about being a projector, and then I'll talk about being a manifestor as yourself. The other key thing is, we call it strategy and authority. And that means that as a projector, I need to be recognized and then invited before I can participate. So I can talk until the cows come home. Those who know me well, that's true. But if I'm not recognized and invited, I actually got nothing more that I can say. So when you and I met, we recognized we had core synergy straight away. And then, you invited me to meet up with you the next week. So I've not only been recognized by you, but I've been invited now into your world and into your life. That is so, that is so sweet for a projector. And that's a really tough lesson to learn, because if you're a projector and you've got to wait for that recognition and invitation, officially that means I can't initiate.
Right.
But what it also means is that the people who are right for me, they're really right for me. And I recognize that I'm not forever, and neither is human design, but the people it's for, the power it has given my clients has been incredible.
Right.
So that's a bit about the projector type, which is 20%. So 1 in 5 people that you come across will be a projector.
And so people listening might be going, oh, I think I've got a team member like that. Or maybe my partner is where they don't initiate. They need someone else to say, hey, want to do this? And sometimes as a leader, that can be frustrating, especially if you're like me, where I'm a manifester. So I just go and make shit happen, as we say. And I often would look at team members and go, why aren't they just starting? And they'd be waiting for instruction or waiting for someone to go, okay, here's where we're at. You can begin now. Or, which part of that do you want to do? Yeah.
That's exactly
great. Thank you, whoever just shared that.
That's exactly right, AJ. And so just understanding in your team what different types you've got, if you know their type, their strategy, and their authority, you are so far ahead of the curve in how you can manage the interrelationships within your teams. And so as a manifester, you're right, you are here to inform. You're not here to ask for permission. So manifestors are only 8% of the population. So you are here to start things, to initiate. And that's exactly what you do. You initiate it. You're like, you know what? I think there needs to be a podcast that's going to focus on this. I believe there needs to be a boardroom in the bush, because we need to take a very different approach to leadership and the next generation. So you are the trailblazer. You are designed to make an impact and go out and make it happen. And that's exactly what you're doing. What you do is going to impact other people. Absolutely. And so you need to be prepared for that. And you need to be prepared in the way that you're not going to necessarily impact everyone in the way that they think they need to be impacted. And so there does need to be a level of self-assuredness that comes with that manifestor energy to say, I know that what I'm initiating isn't for everyone, but that's okay. That people, again, it's a bit like that projector energy, in that the people that are for you are really for you.
Totally.
And the other thing I'd say about sort of the manifestor energy is you have this a beautiful ability to glimpse into the future and actually see what needs to happen 5, 10, 15 years out and bring it into the now. And it can often feel, and tell me if this feels right to you, that you're waiting for people to catch up to your ideas.
Yes.
So again, if you're a manager and you've got a projector in your team and you've got a manifestor in your team, you've already got so much more knowledge about how to manage them correctly. And then it would be remiss of me not to talk about the generator energy, because that's 70% of the population. So when you've got generators, they are here to be doing. They have that energy. They have the sacral energy. If they are loving what they're doing, they can go until 10 o'clock at night. Then they look at their watch and go, oh my God, it's 10 o'clock, I better go to bed. So if they are genuinely engaged in whether it's a professional pursuit or a personal pursuit, their body will generate enough energy to keep them going. And then they will fall asleep and have a terrific night's sleep if they've used all their energy correctly. So that's 70%. So we need to understand who the generators are within the workforce as well, because actually they are the people that you can give 5 meetings to. And if they're loving their job and they're loving what they're representing, they will just keep going out and go, okay, who wants to have drinks after dinner? Whereas the projectors, someone like me is like, can someone else take the clients out for drinks afterwards? Because I am absolutely exhausted, because it's not my energetic profile. So again, when you're looking at people within the workforce, you can really adjust job descriptions to fit their human design profile and the way they are more energetically capable of working. And so that brings much less stress to the team manager or to the CEO, and much less stress to the individual. So you're going to get better performance out of your employees, and you're going to get a better return on equity for the investment. So I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, is because I've seen over the last few years how many people have benefited from understanding their human design at this core level.
Yeah, and I think this really just reminds me of all the research that Gallup does as far as what allows employees to be engaged at work. What is it that allows people to love what they do? And sadly, the statistics say that only about 33% of the workforce are actually engaged at any time and really are loving what they do. And often that could be because there's a mismatch between what the work is or the expectation and someone's human design or their style. And it reiterates for me the importance of a manager knowing their people, because all the research shows that people join a company but they leave their manager, and that the direct line manager, the supervisor, the day-to-day person who shapes that person's work reality is the one who really gives them an opportunity to shine and to work in the way that best works for them. What often happens is we learn to model and copy the role models that have gone before us. So imagine if you were like myself, a manifestor, and you had a generator leader, you then go, oh, hard hours, long hours, that doing is what's going to get me there. And then you try and copy that, which often then leads to burnout. And you can't understand, why can't I do things the same way? And I think, as you were saying, what resonates for me with the manifestor is I am a creator. And I can do really long bursts of work, but then I'll need to go bush and plant trees and dig holes and plow fields and kind of reconserve my energy. But when I'm doing that is when sparks of more ideas are coming. And I'm always thinking, how would this work 50 years from now? What seed can I plant of a tree that I'll never sit under the shade of? Like, that's definitely where my mind is going. Whereas lots of my team members are often really great generators. And I know that I need to have the dream and the vision and be able to paint it in the right way and then hand it over to them to actually do the action, because I've already thought about it in my mind. I kind of go like this and go, I've already kind of done it because I've seen it. And so I'm not that great at the follow through and follow up. And maybe other people can relate to some of these styles. Feel free to pop in the chat box. There are also lots of online tools that you can go and just look up what is my human design, and it will get you to fill it in. So if you know the time of day you were born and where, you might go and do that. And feel free to pop in the chat box if you know what your style is or your design. So Amanda, just a final couple of questions. One of them was, you just mentioned how it helps with teams. And so I'm curious about, have you got a really quick client story or a team or someone you've worked with, and how maybe having some awareness of this has helped them in delivering better results, being more productive, whatever that might be?
Of course, yes. And one of the focuses for my business is to work and develop teams in alignment with the manager and the CEO. And that is, at the end of the day, these are business decisions to invest in your people. But if you're not investing in your people, you're probably going to lose your top performers. And so we need to be really careful and mindful that the people that are most important to us are where we need to add the most amount of value. So when I'm working with teams, and an example I'll use is, I was working with the Chief People Officer for Sendle Australia. And this was during COVID. So this was a really interesting test case. So she had 6 direct reports, but they were across the Philippines, Seattle, Brisbane, Western Australia, and Sydney. And she hadn't met any of these people in person. And the challenge she was finding is that they use Slack as their communication channel, and she could see some tensions elevating on Slack. She could also observe that some people were very reticent to put themselves on Zoom or to turn up to team meetings at all, and that there was a lot more friction happening. And I think that, COVID was a very particular case, yes, but we've still got the challenge now where some people are working from home at least part-time. And so what we did is we did an individual analysis with each of the staff members. And then I presented that to her to say, look, you've got, 1 manifestor, 3 generators, you're a manifesting generator, and you've got a projector. And for her to be able to see through the lens of how they best operated was incredibly valuable, because what she could do then is she could work with each individual team member on the basis of their design. So the employee was happier because they felt seen, they felt appreciated, and they felt that their contribution was being validated in the way they needed to be validated. What it also did is I could also identify where any challenges or tensions were within the team. So I said, right, next time you're working on a particular project or a particular, say, a recruitment goal, don't put these two people together for these reasons. And that was really eye-opening for her, because she said, yeah, I've tried that before and they just didn't gel. I said, and here are the reasons why. It's because their core skills weren't in alignment. Their energetic styles were different. One was collaborative, one was independent in the way they worked. And so if you can just understand those nuances, and you don't have to go to too much detail, but just knowing 4 or 5 key characteristics of each individual team member can really elevate the performance of the team. And that also, of course, means that everyone's happier and healthier. So that's a great example. That's a COVID example. And then when I'm working with companies in Australia directly, I like to have them all in a room. And I like for everyone to hear not only about their own human design type, but that of everyone sitting around them. And then I'll break them into different work groups and say, right, I'll have my projectors over here and my manifesting generators here and my manifestors here. And I'll ask them to answer 2 or 3 questions. And so what they can do is they start to see a familiarity within each other. And these might be people that they didn't work directly with, or there was always a bit of tension. If you can find that commonality, whether it's through your human design type or your decision-making style or anything, it elevates the team cohesion as a whole. And so actually, I think teamwork, when in a workshop environment, is incredibly beneficial. So that's where you see, by the end of the day, you know, the real ahas.
Awesome. And I think everyone probably listening can relate to having worked with other team members before, that you're like, oh, we've just got a different style and it doesn't gel. And what leader or manager doesn't want? Increased communication, decreased conflict, increased productivity, increased inclusion. I think every leader out there has KPIs around those things. So many organizations now are doing their employee engagement surveys and are going, why is our score going down? What else can we do? And particularly when then you see feedback like, we want improved communication. I don't think there's ever been an organization short of Sanitarium that I've worked with that didn't have communication as a gap. And they worked on theirs and really did strengthen it. But every other organization, every employee feedback always says, we want better communication. And when you're looking at a lens like this, and like a lot of different tools that can be used in a workplace, it's understanding that communication means whole different things for everyone. And some people like, I want direct and intimate, you know, being told one-on-one how I'm going and what else I can do. Other people are like, I expect it to be a big blanket. I want to go to something with my whole team and be stimulated by that. Other people are like, I want to learn one-on-one from someone and stand next to them and be modeled and shown. So the more we can understand, whether it is human design or some other tool, but the more we as leaders can understand our people, understand what makes them tick, what are their strengths, what are their passions, how do they get in flow, and how do we do more of that with them, the more we're going to get productivity. I often share there's some really great research that's been done recently on people's enjoyment at work. And that research showed that we actually only need to love our work 20% of the time to be engaged. 20%, that's it. So literally like a couple of hours a day or a day a week, we've got to love what we do. And so as managers and leaders, it's really on us to be asking our team, what do you love in your role? What do you loathe? And how can I help you get more of the love and a bit less of the loathe? Or maybe reshape some of the ways we do things so that it's a better fit for your style and who you are. So hopefully people have got some little ideas and clues here. And I love, Amanda, that you come from that really logical, you know, left brain kind of financial services industry first before coming to this, because I think because you have both those worlds, you're able to bridge that gap and articulate how this can help people in a way that doesn't seem like it's up there airy-fairy, but is grounded in the science of it. So thank you for sharing that in a way that we can think about how that works for us. I'd love you to share before you finish up and tell us how to find you. What are you most grateful for now that you're at this point in your career and you've been through all of these different kind of phases? What are you most grateful for now?
Having the bravery to actually go out on my own. And I, again, didn't appreciate how big a leap it was and how much time it would actually take to build a business. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for the fact that when I'm having conversations, people are at least receptive to this, because it is a different concept and it is slightly esoteric. So, but once you've taken that grainful of sugar, you know, or salt, and you see the results that come from this, that's where I get continually validated that I'm onto something that's super cool, super challenging for people, but also it has really transformed managers and organizations in a way that they've never seen before. And so that's what just continues to power me, because again, I know it's not going to be for everyone, but for the people it's for, they absolutely love it.
Yeah. And I think the more we move into a world of AI and technology that supports us, and I know I'm an early adopter, I love all of that stuff, but the reality is deep down, we're all still human. And so the more we can understand and relate to humans, as well as embracing the technologies, I think the better our workplaces can be. And the more I believe people should be able to come to work every day, going home as safe and well as they went, but also inspired to go, I actually love what I do. And I'm really enjoying and fulfilled in my work. So Amanda, how can people find you and find out more about how human design might apply in their workplace or in their team?
Of course, thank you. So probably my website's the best source of information. So it's authentichuman.com.au. And on that website, there's also a free calculator. So you can actually go and have a look at your own human design type. And then if you want to have a complimentary call to discuss how it might benefit either you personally or I guess your organization, by all means, I'm very happy to have that conversation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, AJ, for the opportunity. Thank you.